investments grew from $93,920 in 1990 to $5,359,960 in the current year. That's a 5,607% increase. In the Ladysmith area, went from $49,090 to $1,951,180 in 2010. That's a 3,880% increase over 20 years. Carmel Church and Ladysmith personal property assessed for the period 90 through 2010. Personal property assessed in 1990 was $142,950. Personal property assessed in the year 2010 is $7,311,140. That's a 5,014% increase over this 20-year period. American Stone is another investment that came here as a result of the utility investment. You can see the major equipment that they utilize at that facility and the taxation that we've been able to generate as a result of that. BPOL, Business and Property Occupational License Revenues, and that growth in the utility investment area of Carmel Church. As you can see, in 1990 there was no BPOL revenue. In 2010, $526,998. So a total of 18 years over that period is $3,957,184 or $148 in BPOL revenue from Carmel Church. In Ladysmith, same situation. There was no BPOL revenue in 1990, but in 2010, it's $90,795. And the total for the entire 18 years is $805,704. Meals tax. That's a spinoff of utility investment that sometimes we take for granted. But if you look at the period in 1990, meals taxes in Carmel Church were $43,979. This year, meals taxes in Carmel Church are $603,057. That's a 1,271% increase over this 20-year period. In Ladysmith, meals taxes in 90 were a modest $4,801. Now in 2010, they're $131,790. That's a 2,744% increase. You see the picture of Arby's, who's one of the latest restaurants to be recruited to Caroline. Our growth in employment is also a direct investment and a spinoff from our utilities. And in 90, we had almost 9,100 jobs of people who were employed. In the next 3 years, employment was as low as 8,749. And unemployment in Caroline was as high as 14.1%. From 2000 until the depth of this current recession, employment has steadily increased to 13,510 jobs in Caroline County. That's an addition of 4,761 jobs over this period. And finally, just to recap, when you talk about the utility investment in the county as a summation, it comes down to three areas. It comes down to investment. It comes down to the consideration of this Board of Supervisors and where to strategically place utilities. It comes down to your comprehensive plan, the sub-area planning that has gone into this process, and ultimately where is the best place for growth in the county, and the utilities have followed that. The revenue, as I pointed out, is a spin-off of those decisions. And then ultimately bringing people here to work, putting our own people to work, and sustaining that employment, that has to be a long-range goal for the future, but it has been a short-range goal over the last 20 years that we have met successfully. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude this presentation and be prepared to answer any questions that you might have. I would remind the public that this presentation is available on our website, and it will also be available in hard copy in my office for any member of the public who would like to see it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ashcraft, for bringing that report to the people of Caroline County. Thank you so much. All right, next we have our public comment period, and would like to at this time ask citizens if you'd like to come and speak to the board on any matter other than the public hearings that we have slated for tonight. If you want to talk about any of the public hearings for the resolution for the sale and awards of water and sewer revenue bonds, do not speak now, speak later. And also, if you want to speak in reference to the Milford easements, you would need to speak later on those. But if anyone would like to come and speak to the board on any other matter, please come forward, state your name and your voting district, and Ms. Hall has a statement she needs to read.
The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on any matter which is not scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other public demonstrations of support or opposition. Public comment period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. All public comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and antagonistic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meeting. Comments should focus on matters or issues before the board or county and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name, address, and voting district. If applicable, there shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public comment period at any single board meeting. County administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired.
Thank you, Mrs. Hall. So if any citizens who would like to address the board on any matter, please come forward, state your name and your voting district.
I guess I'll be first.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. I'm Cindy Mayturn, 640 Lake Caroline Drive, the Madison District. I'm also a small business owner.
Are you here for the public hearing or the?
I'm not here for the public hearing, I don't think.
Okay.
This is on the CIP. Can I speak on the CIP now? And the different projects I would like to see?
Okay.
I think I'm at the right time.
All right.
If not, you'll let me know.
Absolutely. No,
Thank
good.
you.
Sure.
I'm also a business owner, small business owner, of a full-service employment agency. Before relocating to Caroline County for the past 8 years, the 20 years beforehand, I lived in Stafford County. I was very active there in Stafford and also served on the Planning Commission. I understand firsthand the importance of representing my district and that I was appointed to. But most important, every decision that I made should and was for the betterment of the entire county, not just my district. I realize the importance of the capital improvement program, or the plan, I'm sorry. It is our planning tool for the future and our wish list. We know it cannot happen unless we have the funding. I feel that the #1 priority should be to attract quality businesses to our county. We can only do that by expanding our wastewater treatment plant. We have to have this for new companies to move in, and that brings the golden word, JOBS, jobs. That will bring in more tax money, which will help with other services, be it schools, fire, rescue, police, libraries, parks, and recreation. Without expanding this service, you cannot expect for our current services to expand, and in the long run, you will see these services cut. I would also like to see the library services expanded to Dawn, the water problems taken care of at Caroline Pines, and support of the new YMCA. I realize we're in tough economic times, but look at how we can turn that around here in Caroline County. Construction costs are down due to being it's so competitive right now. We will not find a better time or a better fiscal price to build than right now. As you can see, I'm asking for projects that affect all of Caroline County, not my district, and asking that Caroline be in the forefront for the state of Virginia. We're saying our doors are open for business. We are expanding and planning for the future. And all of this means adding to the quality of life in Caroline County. Thank you for your time, and good night.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Maythorne.
Thank you.
Any other citizens who'd like to address the board at this time? Are any other citizens who'd like to address the board at this time? Are any other citizens who'd like to address the board at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Okay, public hearing. First, we have item number 6, our first public hearing this evening. And again, Mrs. Hall, can you review the rules for the public hearing?
Public hearing shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on the proposed borrowing resolution. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other public demonstrations of support or opposition. The public hearing shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or a question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. All comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and antagonistic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meeting. Comments should focus on the public hearing and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name, address, and voting district, if applicable. There shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. If a speaker represents a group, there shall be a time limit of 5 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public hearing at any single board meeting. County administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hall. And at this time, before we open the public hearing, Courtney Rogers will review the resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to do is just walk you through the debt side of what's going to happen if you approve this. And we've talked about this a number of times. We've got a few updates here for you this evening. I know this is going to be hard to read. And I've got some copies if anyone in the audience is having trouble and wants to see this a little bit better. But essentially where we stand right now is with the Utility Enterprise Fund. You've got $21.6 million of principal outstanding. With the Dawn Enterprise debt, you've got $2.88 million for a total of $24.483 million. Now, in the past, we've not included Dawn in the Enterprise Fund, and we still won't, and here's why. When we set up our debt with VRA, and we've pledged revenues. We only pledge revenues from the Carmel System, Ladysmith, Milford areas, if you will. Dawn is not a part of that security that we've given VRA. So that's why you see these segregated into two areas. So that's why what you're going to see on the next slide is we're only going to refer to the first part, the $21.6 million. Essentially where we are today with the enterprise fund itself is we have user fees supporting total operations. The debt service is covered by new growth. And we've estimated new connections at 75 in 2011, 90 in 2012, 115 in 2013, and then 140 in 2014, growing a little bit each year thereafter. And that's based on the current connection fees of $16,500 per connection. When you take that into account, what you see in the far column is that you have positive revenue in 2011 and 2012 to the tune of $300,000 in the first year, $500,000 in the second year. And then we have a small deficit in 2013 of roughly $11,000. And then as we pick up growth in 2014 and thereafter, we actually have positive surpluses for the system. Now, this is before we add any new debt. On the next slide is the debt service for each of the two projects that we're considering tonight. The wastewater treatment plant has a construction price tag of approximately $16.4 million. The Caroline Pines is at $3 million. What you're seeing here are the principal amounts and basically the assumptions that were given to us by VRA at the moment, and that's where we're talking about going through and borrowing the monies tonight. So the size of the principal is not necessarily going to be the size of the construction amount. Now, knowing that, one of the things I know that you'll see in the resolutions, we have a not to exceed number of $22 million. And when you add these numbers together, it is much larger than that, and that is because VRA has certain requirements that we size up. And in addition to that, we also have capitalized interest that we're borrowing, so that in some of the early years, we give ourselves a chance for the system to grow. This wastewater treatment plant is going to be supporting growth for a long time, and we don't want to hinder ourselves by having to pay for it right out of the gate. So as the plant's being constructed, we'll be borrowing extra money to pay interest, so that once it's up and running and able to produce more revenues, then we'll be able to start paying the principal and interest back. The other thing you'll see on this page is we have delayed principal on the wastewater treatment plant out to 2021. Now, the reason that we're doing that is if you take this debt and add it into the existing structure that we have, what you're going to see is an overall level structure. So once we've issued this debt, we're not going to have a very front-loaded, we're not going to be back-loaded, we're going to be very level in terms of our payments. For the Caroline Pines, you'll see we've actually started paying the principal back in year 3, and then it's basically level payments thereafter. So the focus on Caroline Pines for a moment. Well, I know that it's kind of hard to see these numbers, but I'm going to walk you through the assumptions. Essentially, what we're doing is we're going to look at Caroline Pines as it were on its own. Let's assume for a moment, while it's going to be a part of the larger system, let's assume for the moment that it's on its own. We've been given assumptions for annual O&M starting in year 1 of $12,400, and that's going to grow at 3% a year. Next column, we've got our estimated principal and interest, basically at 4.5%. And then the last column, which is shaded in red, is the total debt service and annual O&M. So that's the expenditures that we've got to cover. Then we start calculating the revenues. We've started with a number of residential connection of 381. Then we've added very conservative numbers of 1 per year in years 1 and 2, 2 in year 3, 3 in year 4, and then 4 in each year thereafter, for a total of 111 connections over the 30-year period. The monthly water charges that are paid by the residences starts out at $23.10 for an average user, and we've assumed growth of 4% per year of those charges in terms of the actual rates growing. Now we show commercial charges, but at the moment we have assumed that there would not be any commercial. So we're trying to be very conservative there. So that gives us our annual water residential user charges revenue, starting out at $105,613 in year one, and then growing thereafter based on the growth of new connections as well as the 4% rate per year. Next, we've got the existing residential homes are going to pay an availability fee equal to $2,800 per home over a 5-year period. So we've got a partial year in 2011, a half year is what's assumed, full years in years 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then a half year in year 6 or year 5 in terms of the actual operation starting. Then we've got the annual availability fees for those new connections, the 1 for 2 years, 2 in year 3, and so on. When you add all that together, we've got total water revenues in the blue column of $212,293 in the first year, $331,000 in year 2, and then growing thereafter. Next column, we've brought the expenditure column over from column 3 to show, so you can see them side by side, with the last column being revenues minus expenditures. We've got positive numbers basically in the $200,000 range for the first 2 years, in the high 100,000 range for the next 4, and then once those availability fees from the existing residences fall off in year 7, we basically have a break even of $400. And then it grows positive thereafter. Reason being, 1, you've got additional growth, but more importantly, we've got the 4% increase in rates as the operations grow and just the growth of the system. The one thing I'll point out is we did run a case where there was no new residential connections, so there was no new growth, so we started with the 381 and didn't grow it. And while there may be some years where there's some negative years, at the end there was still 1,000,001. At the end of 30 years, the system produced a cumulative 1,000,001 over the time period. So now we're going to go back and look at the enterprise system as a whole. The first 3 columns basically show the principal, interest, and total debt payments that would be needed for the both projects, for both the wastewater treatment plant and the Caroline Pines project. Again, we're putting this in as a full system. We add that to our existing debt, and then we have our total. And what you'll see is that we've got roughly $1,000,001, $1,000,002 in years 11 and 12, 2011, 2012. Then it grows to $2.5 million in 2013, roughly $3 million in 2014, and then it grows up to, or it stays in that $3,000,001 range, basically out to 2019, and then begins to fall thereafter. And again, that's pretty level, but kind of falling at a kind of a medium pace. There's no big drop-offs, if you will. Then we've got our estimated new connections we talked about a few slides ago. We've got the connection fees associated with that. We've got our Caroline Pines revenues. We've got our total, and then we're showing the surplus deficit, taking into account the debt service. And what you'll see is we're positive in years 11 and 12. In 2013, we show a deficit of roughly $500,000. On the last column, you'll see is cumulative. If the money from 2011 and 2012 is set aside, you actually end up positive after 2013. But starting in 2014, the numbers do go negative. Basically, out through 2012, we have a deficit in the system, and then it goes positive thereafter. Now, one thing that we caught after we put this presentation together is this page does not show the roughly $1 million from the 5 years worth of connection fees that the Caroline Pines existing users are going to put in. So if you take that into account, essentially what it does is it cuts that deficit, that cumulative surplus, or excuse me, cumulative deficit from $2.8 million to roughly $1.7 million. So essentially what you end up with is deficits in 2011 and 12 a smaller deficit in 2013 of roughly $300,000, another $300,000 in 2015, another $300,000 in 2016, and then roughly $400,000 in 2017, 18, and then drops to that 333, 250, 225, and 127. Another way to think about it in terms of tax equivalent, it's roughly 2 cents per year at most. Last couple of slides, I know we've talked about before, but I want to make sure that it is clear that the VRA credit requirements, the revenue covenant is basically that we would have sufficient revenues to cover our debt service equal to 1 times the principal and interest on the bonds. If for some reason the revenue covenant is not met, a rate study would be presented to the board. And as a backup, they're requiring that there be a local debt service reserve fund set aside. And that set aside is calculated looking at what the projected debt service would be in 2013. They're going to give you the value of roughly 72 connections or $1 million worth of connection fees. Any amount over and above that, they want to have set aside in a fund that they will hold by June 30th of 2012. And right now we're estimating that to be $1,343,000. And then because debt service grows into 2014, there'd be an additional $628 that would need to be added to that amount the following fiscal year. Now, that amount would be held by VRA, and if a situation arose where the county didn't make its payment, then they would dip into that amount until such time that they could work out that situation with the county. On the flip side, should our connection fees grow faster than we projected here, or once we get to the point where we have produced surpluses for a 3-year consecutive period, this money will be given back to this county to be used in the utility system. So this money will be given back to the county at some point, whether it's at the end of the debt or if connection fees produce surpluses over a 3-year period. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, there it is. You hit hard.
Okay.
Okay.
Board members have questions at this time? Ms. Eggers?
I do have one question of Mr. Rogers. The numbers that you're showing as far as revenue on the countywide system.
Yes, sir.
Wastewater and water. Does it include any increases in availability fees?
No, sir.
It does not.
Does not.
It does include the current, which we
16.5,
increased,
yes, sir.
Yes.
Currently at $16,500 per home for water and sewer connections.
Okay. Mr. Seeley?
In our packet, we have $2,200,000 in capitalized interest, and then we have $347,940 of cost issuance.
Right.
When do we have to come up with cost issuance, or is that part of the loan?
It's part of the loan. Both are part of the loan.
So the 220, so that's different than the $1,900,000 that we have to have cash reserve.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As one of the notes, I believe we pointed out on the last page, at the bottom of page 15, the local reserve dollars cannot be borrowed, so that is not a part of the loan.
So in 2013, now this doesn't take into account the other budget that we've talked, the county's budget, where we have a $2 million basically step up in 2013. Is this part of that?
No, sir.
So this is in addition
This is
to
over and above debt service.
So it would be a $3 million step up then. in 2013?
In 2013, it goes from $1,058,000 to 2.343. So it's a $1.3 million step up in debt service. And then you'd have an additional $1.3 million on top of that.
And then the following year, another million.
628,000 estimated right now.
So almost 4 million when you add it all up in 2 years.
1.9 million for the reserve, and you're going to go from $1 million to 2.9. Right. About 3.8.
2.9.
You're going to go from 1 million up to 2.9, so it's a $1.9 million jump
And that's
over 2 years.
and that doesn't did that include this cost of issuance as
No,
well?
that's
So
excuse me, that's
it'll be
debt service.
3.8 then,
It'll be 3.8.
almost $4 million.
Basically half for debt service, half for the reserve.
And then we still have the 2 million cost of issuance that's part of the loan.
That's already built into the $1.9 million
Okay.
jump in debt service.
Okay.
That's all net built in. That 2.2 is basically keeping you from making that jump now.
Right, we're borrowing the interest that we're going to pay for 2 years.
Right. Otherwise, you're going to be jumping up from the $1 million in 2011 up to 2012.
Okay, so we're still borrowing money to pay interest for 2 years when we do this.
Right.
Okay, just making sure I'm clear.
And actually, I think it's 18 months, I think is what we have.
18
I think we did 18 months.
All right, Ms. Thomas?
Well, Mr. Rogers, I'm not sure you can answer this. Maybe Mrs. Hatcher would be better equipped to answer it, because I just want to make sure I'm including everything. We haven't, we as a board haven't identified specifically where revenue, real estate taxes, or whatever from recent developments in the Carmel Church area will be allocated. So in other words, the real estate tax from McKesson, whatever personal property tax and those things, we as a board have not identified specifically where those would go. So excuse me, that was just coincidental. Do you have any idea of what those projected revenues would be based on our current tax rate? And now seeing you, I know you gave us those figures before, but would you mind refreshing us one more time?
Yes, sir. There's actually a spread based on the actual investment numbers that McKesson makes. It's between 437 to 516 based solely on machine and tool taxes. We're sequestering, as you recall from the agreement, the real estate taxes for other purpose. And then there's also motor taxes, they're trucks that we'll be taxing too. I think it is reasonable to assume $500,000 in revenue. It could be more, it could be $600,000
You
plus.
spent 500,000.
500,000 seems a reasonable number to assume.
Okay, and Mr. Seeley just whispered in my ear they don't have any trucks. He asked them, so
No, they're going to have 40 trucks,
okay.
is what we were told.
You told me about the distribution, that they have all the trucks.
Okay. So,
I thought you talked about it. I did too. He
so
said-
theoretically, you're saying just from that investment we have just acquired there's $500,000 in tax revenue that will come towards the county that I guess we should probably, as a board, decide X percentage of that tax revenue would go towards this project if we go forward. Now, there's also another project that we did a rezoning for already, and I guess you probably don't have any extra details on that project at this point yet, do you?
No, sir.
Okay. my issue point is the VRA, I guess, loan requirements. That's not for you, that's
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rogers. I appreciate it, Mr. Wilson.
The local reserve.
Right. And, you know, I understand making an investment in the future. I understand all the positive things this could be, but I also understand I want to take advantage of what I've already got, being just the McKesson project. But if I have to use that as a guarantee of this particular project, you know, what's in the future, and that's the one thing I'm trying to get my hands around right now. The fact that I couldn't see any of those numbers is a personal problem. That's not yours, but that's the local reserve is really what I have to wrestle with.
Right.
And
Right.
you, of course, being the financial consultant, did you make a recommendation for the local reserve?
No, that was brought to us. And I was going to say, essentially what you're seeing is they're willing to give you the benefit of $1 million worth of growth,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not willing to jump to $3 million worth of growth, if you see what I mean. So
Yeah.
essentially we're putting roughly $2 million aside for them to make them more comfortable. What's happening on their side is, as the market has changed over the last couple of years, I don't think we would have seen this 5 years ago from them. And we didn't back in 2001.
But I had a higher
What's
rate
happened is, yeah, they're getting more scrutiny from New York and the rating agencies, and so as a result, they're passing along. What I didn't negotiate was the ability to get out of this if we show some improvement down the road, and that was the 3-year. We got them to buy into if we show surpluses over a 3-year period and things are going well, they would give us the money back and not wait until the year 30 of the loan, which is what I was trying to avoid.
Right.
So that part I did bring up.
So theoretically, I could take half of what my projected revenue will be from just this one project, save it for 3 years, 4 years, and I'd pretty much be there.
Right.
But unless we commit to saving it now, I'm going to look at the famous thing I say at home is who's going to pay that bill when it comes. So, okay,
Right. That's right.
okay. That was what I needed to make sure I understood. Thank you, sir.
I have one other question.
Go ahead, Ms. Seeley.
We show in your projection 75 connections, and we need that revenue from 75 connections times 16,000 to be used for debt service, correct?
In, excuse me, in 2011, we don't need all of it because we're showing a $200,000 surplus. And just for the moment, if we assume that we do get the 75, we have 200 that year and 375 the next year, you can also set aside toward that reserve.
Well, let me go one step
But I think
further.
you're going the other direction
Mr.
probably.
Ashcraft, we currently have 75 connections built into the utility fund to meet revenue for the operations of utilities. Is that correct?
No, that's, the 75 connections is for debt service, not for operation.
Your question is how much is built in the budget currently?
Right.
75,
Is that for debt service or for operation?
debt service.
Okay, so we have to make 75 in this year, or 60 even, let's say 15, you're saying we're 200,000 ahead currently,
If the 75 come to fruition.
if the 75 come, but if they don't, we're not.
Right. So
Okay.
take the, sorry, I don't have a calculator around me. If you take the 208 and divide it by 16.5, that'll give you the number of connections that, that you have to be break even.
Okay.
Does anybody know the number of connections we had the year we just completed?
65.
65?
Yes, sir.
How many do we have now?
I was thinking it was 74 or something like that total.
How many do we have, Joey?
79 maybe. I've seen an estimate like 79 or 81, something like that.
What is it, Joey?
I apologize. I thought we had received 65. That's what we budgeted. We had 76 that actually came in.
Budget 65.
We budgeted
and had
65.
76.
Yeah, my
Right,
apologies.
we budgeted 75 the year before and came up short.
Short. Right.
That's what happened.
And-
How many do we have so far? That was the other question.
13 and a half. And another 10
Since
coming.
July 1st?
Since July 1st. 13 and a half and 10 coming. So we're almost at 25, or 23 and a half with the 10 coming,
13 and a half.
plus 10 coming.
But if I say it was 13 and a half for 3 months, I mean, there is no average growth
Right.
and whatnot. It's not going to be 3 a month. It could be 50 in 1 month and none for the rest of the time.
Right, because obviously it's going to slow down a little bit during the winter.
13 would be 52. So 13 and a half is 54. That's Joey's growth. Connections higher in the summer or in the spring? First half of the year, last half of the year.
Last year, we did better in the fall of the year. We do have Lakesville Villages currently, as soon as we get putting utilities in, I probably got another 8 connections in Lakesville Villages getting ready to apply for. Then additional 10, approximately 10 on McKesson once we get all their numbers in. There's about 18 more connections right there on top of what we have now.
McKesson's free. There's no charge for the McKesson connection. Right. There's no charge for the McKesson connection.
What do you mean no charge?
They have to pay it.
Okay. Talk loud, please.
Yeah, I didn't.
We did not negotiate anything with McKesson on availability or connection fees.
Was on
So
the
Well, they're paying for 10 fees.
So they're going to pay for those 10?
real estate. It was just the real estate.
Yeah, there's just real estate that's different. Okay, thank you.
And escrow.
All right. Can I use that real estate escrow account to cover my,
The revenues can come from wherever you can get them. They don't have to be from utility specific.
wait, he said
So-
yeah.
Well, I'm saying whatever, the revenues can come from wherever you can get them from. County attorney tells you where you can get them from.
Yeah, I was liking your
But it-
answer,
but-
but I have to listen to him.
But you don't have to assume they come from utilities, is my point. So,
Yeah,
Right.
I just think we either need to discuss those, kind of have a plan, at least now, just so we all understand what we're getting into, rather than see my shock face in 2 years. So, okay, I'm sure we'll have ample opportunity to discuss this evening.
Okay, any other questions? For Mr. Rogers? For all the staff members? Before we go into public hearing? Let's do that. Okay, let's go ahead and proceed for the public hearing. All right. We now declare the public hearing open for a resolution providing the issuance of sales and award of water and sewer revenue bonds, Series 2010B of the Caroline County, Virginia, in a principal amount not to exceed $22 million, and providing for the form details and payment thereof. Are there any citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing?
Nobody else is saying anything, I will. I'm Kerry Bischoff, Sparta Road, Bowling Green District. I'll be short and brief, to the point. I've spoke on this before. I don't believe in burying money in the ground, wait for the economy to come back. Few words I heard during the presentation that you gentlemen were throwing around, assumptions, one word. Theoretically, another word. Another word, predictions, and I believe from over here we heard coming. I don't think the county attorney will have a problem with that money coming from my pocket, and that's exactly where it'll come from. Thank you.